Thank you for turning to page 121 and our continuing Traveler Week. Today we're going to take a look at something from history that I pulled out of Traveler, the Third Imperium book by Mongoose. Love this book. I've got to get a hard copy of this guy. This is one of my favorite go-to books right now. And that's going to be from Traveler History, which is why I chose this book, on the Psionic Suppressions. Psionic Suppressions are an historical event that happened around 800 of the Third Imperium. And I'm going to go into what they were and the ripple effect they still have in the Imperium today. And a little bit of the public hysteria that led to them, things like that. And maybe some of the reasons behind the psionic suppressions. Maybe it wasn't just something that happened organically. Maybe it was something that was kind of instilled in the Third Imperium citizens. Who knows? So that's going to be today's topic. Just again, want to mention subscriptions. I still get over half my views from non-subscribers, so come on in. Let's go ahead and build the channel up a little bit. Got a Patreon going. Let's go ahead and get that going. I can get maybe better electronics, maybe a background for Traveler, that kind of thing. I just wanted the channel to continue to thrive and grow. So if you can help me out, that'd be great. But back to today's topic, the psionic suppressions in the Third Imperium. The psionic suppressions, what were they? How come they happened? Well, page 97 of this excellent book, Travel to the Third Imperium, gives us a good look at them. Got to move to page 97 to see it. I took a comprehensive look at this book a few months ago on my channel. It's a video that's still available, so if you want to take a look at it, go right ahead. Psionic Suppressions, page 97. Here we go. The Psionic Suppressions. I'll go ahead and blow that guy up a little bit. Okay. In the year 772, it was discovered that many of the Imperium's 65 chartered psionics institutes had been infiltrated by the Zodani consulate. Most of the imperial history, psionics have been looked upon as an oddity of sorts. While the practice of psionics was never fully embraced in the Imperium, there have been psionic clubs and psionicology university programs since the age of the Silean Federation. The psionic suppressions, I'm not going to read the whole article, obviously, because why? But basically, the psionic suppressions were a public response to some scandals in the various psionic institutes that were scattered around the Third Imperium. Some institutes had more scandals than others. Some scandals were legitimate. Others were kind of put-up jobs. And I'm going to go into a little bit of that and the ultimate effect that these suppressions had on the Imperium. So basically, the scandals don't detail here as to what the actual scandals were. A lot of them had to do with infiltration by the Zodani consulate, money, bribery and money laundering, things like that. But they don't go into tremendous details here, and that's fine. You don't really need the detail as to what the scandals were. Just the scandals were a thing. So the Zodani consulate infiltrating imperial society, specifically through the psionic institutes, right away reminded me of the Red Menace, the Red Scare in the 50s in the United States, where suddenly everything that might be communist was terrible and it was going to destroy your way of life. Therefore, it had to be fought tooth and nail. I have the idea that was the idea that the psionic suppressions in Traveler were based on. Just a moment in time where public hysteria kind of overtook good sense and unfortunately ruined a lot of lives. I'm not going to go into the merit of the communist witch hunts of the 50s or anything like that, but I just see the parallel here as I'm looking at the psionic suppressions in Traveler. So that's kind of where I think the root came from. The guys that created Traveler would have grown up during the time of the Red Menace and the Red Scare. And I have a feeling that kind of spoke a little bit to this. So in the Traveler universe, starting in 772, many of the Imperium's charted places had been infiltrated by the Zodani consulate. Whether this was true or not was never really proven, simply that it was believed. Well, this led to a big imperial review of psionic institutes as a whole, their function in society, and what they did and how they operated, and could this be true? Were they really infiltrated by Zodani, and was this something to worry about? Well, all of that kind of went away. In 792, the pro-Zodani government of Attica and the Spinward Marches came under fire. Members of the public asserted that the Zodani-trained scions had manipulated the outcome of what were supposedly free elections. Attica became a lightning rod for growing anti-psionic sentiments and quickly descended to chaos as protests against the government became violent. Elected officials invited Zodani peacekeeping troops to restore order, and an Imperial Navy squadron blockaded the world in response to the Zodani incursion. The government fell before things got further out of control, and both the Zodani and Imperium withdrew. As news of these events swept across the Imperium, anti-psionic fervor grew. So it was just something like that. It was a simmering political scandal, a simmering public scandal that suddenly ignited in 792 on one world. And once that happened, the imperial sentiment went completely anti-psionic. So much so that in 800, Empress Paula II signed the first of 65 suppression orders for all psionic institutes operating within imperial space. All the institutes were ordered to cease operations and training programs immediately. The hysteria over the border into the Soleimani Autonomous Region, where a similar anti-psionic pogrom took place. By 826, all the institutes had their charters revoked and practicing scions were forced underground. So the Soleimani kind of latched onto the imperial thing, and they too had this pogrom against psionic institutes. And basically, a company like SUSAG that had a lot of pharmaceuticals that worked with scions and psionics fought hard to keep the suppressions from happening. It was going to bite into their market share a great deal. Unfortunately, it really didn't help, and the suppressions went forward. Now, why did the suppressions happen? Beyond the possibility of just public hysteria over something that may or may not have been a real problem, there are a few different ideas that have been put forth as to why the psionic suppressions happened. And you take a look at psychohistory, and one of the theories that have been put forth over the years is that the psionic suppressions were manipulation by the Hivers. And the Hivers didn't want humanity to have the psionics, so they found the best way to create some kind of public outcry against them and cause them to be banned. There's another argument that says that everything was true. The Zodani were infiltrating the Imperium and would have overthrown the Imperium had something not been done by Paul II to stop the existence of the psionic institutes. My personal belief, and this is my theory that I've long held in Traveler, 40 years, is that this was a psychohistory treatise, a thing done by the Zodani. What better way to strip out a potent weapon from your enemy than to have him willingly get rid of it? Zodani, their entire society is based on psionics. What better way to keep the upper hand in that regard than to have your enemy believe psionics were evil and needed to be stopped? So I always thought that the Zodani were the ones behind the Zodani psionic suppression. Just my thought. I've always kind of entertained that idea. I believe that's the way I would write it if I were the GM running this during the 800s. So now you're going, well, wait a minute. This happened in 800. Those people are long dead. And, we're in 1105. It's 300 years later. Why do we care? Well, we care because the psionic suppression and the psionic ban in imperial space still holds today. It's illegal to have psionic institutes anywhere in the imperial space. There is still one, reputedly, on Terra, and there's another reputedly run by the Imperium in the Spinward Marches. But those are highly classified, top secret installations. And of course, those rumors exist, but they don't really, hey, there's no such thing as psionic institutes. But of course there are. There is no major polity like the Imperium that's going to strip itself of an advantage of having their own psionics, if nothing else, to combat the psionic races that are out there. The Zodani being the foremost psionic foe that the Imperium has. So of course there are still covert areas that scions are trained. First edition Mongoose had a really nice book called Scion, Mind Over Matter, is book 4. And this book goes into scions and psionics in tremendous detail. It's about 90 pages of just psionics. The way the Mongoose first edition stuff was written, a lot of it was, in this universe you can do this, but if you're running more like a Babylon 5 universe, do this. And I like that, except I like the way Mongoose Second has gone. We're worried about charted space as our first and foremost thing that the books are written about. And then there might be a mention here or there, or the Traveler Companion book, with other stuff that you could do if you wanted to go beyond the charted space. The Mongoose first edition books kind of did that as a default, where it was always written in. Not saying good or bad, it was just how it was done. This book, Scion, goes into what it would be like to have Scions in the Imperial Navy, in the Marines, in the Scout Service, the Diplomatic Corps. You get a lot of information in here on different Scion careers. They even have interdimensional and time warp careers in here. The Underground Psionic Network. I'm just taking a look at a few of the careers. There, Scion Scouts, and how you would be a Scion in the Scout, how your career would progress, your mustering out tables, everything else. So that was one strength of this edition of Mongoose Traveler, first edition, is that it gave us a good look at a lot of options. Mongoose Second has chosen, and I think wisely, to kind of narrow the focus to only the game that we play, which is Mongoose Second Edition, and they're not giving us a bunch of extraneous stuff except in special cases like the Traveler Companion, where they'll take a look at alternate universes you might want to do things in. Traveler Companion talks about hyperdrives. That's even in the current the ship upgrade, whose name is escaping me at the moment. High Guard, thank you. It's in the current High Guard as well. But these books tended to have it kind of be more to the forefront than Mongoose Second. Oop, look at that! I paid $2 for this guy on a closeout. So that was that's one of the ways you can use psionics in your campaign. In my Traveler universe, if someone were to want to be a Scion, they could find an underground psionic institute that would go ahead and train them up, or they could have gone through a covert part of scout training, for instance. I've used in my previous video on Scions, I talked about my scout who wanted to become a Scion. Well, he could just have gone through the Scion training in the Scouts. So there's a lot of different ways you can roll it into your game. But the psionic suppressions are important because if your Scion overtly shows that they have psionics, they can find themselves the object of a lot of prejudice and a possible active hostility, depending on the planet that they're on. So it can add a nice role-playing dynamic. It can add a nice level of secrecy that your character must maintain in order to keep themselves and their compatriots safe. So the psionic suppressions are very much alive in the Third Imperium. Psionics are outlawed. Possession of most psionic hardware is outlawed. And of course, the government has access to everything they need because they've never ever stopped training Scions. So that's all I've got to say today on the psionic suppressions. I hope you're enjoying Traveler Week. We're about halfway through at this point. I've enjoyed presenting them. My next one is going to be on psionic institutes and how you could integrate those into your campaign. And we're going to take a look at a book from T4 that is kind of the last word on psionic institutes. So that'll be for the next episode as we continue Traveler Week here on page 121. Thanks for watching. I appreciate your time, and I'll see you next time.